Good afternoon and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Joshua.
And I'm Royce. Today we're talking about Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit is an Oscar-winning 2019 World War II comedy-drama film directed by New Zealand director Taika Waititi. It's nearing the end of the war, and 10-year-old Jojo, joined by his imaginary friend, which in the director's own words is an ethnically incorrect Adolf Hitler, strives to become a hero for the Nazis. However, unforeseen circumstances prevent that from happening, and while stuck at home, Jojo makes a startling discovery that tests his beliefs. The film stars newcomers Roman Griffin Davis as Jojo, Thomasin McKenzie as a young Jewish woman Elsa, and also stars famous faces like Scarlett Johansson as Jojo's mother, Sam Rockwell as a Nazi hero operating a Hitler youth camp, Rebel Wilson, Alfie Allen and Stephen Merchant as various other Nazi and Gestapo officers, and of course Taika Waititi himself as the imaginary Adolf. It's very funny, it's also very sad in places, and all in all very interesting. It's definitely a Taika Waititi film if you've seen his other work like Boy, What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilderpeople. Josh, what did you make of this film?
This was, for me, the film I've been waiting for the year. I didn't get the chance to see this in theaters. That looks funny and hilarious. It almost reminded me of the comedy Death of Stalin. When it finally got available for DVD purchase, by this point it will be available on DVD. Yep. I loved it. It was funny, it was depressing, and it didn't shy away from the subjects that were considered taboo.
We'll talk a little bit about the plot, because a lot of the plot was actually revealed in trailers and such, so we won't be spoiling too much. I think a lot of the spoilers comes down to the humour and the jokes, as opposed to the actual story, but we won't delve too much into that. We might touch on some things, and we'll go into a more in-depth review on my YouTube channel, a special YouTube version of this. That's Royce Pentaghast. I'll give the further details for that later on. Yeah, I really like this film. It's a story I think I've heard before, or versions of, because basically Jojo is, forced to stay at home, as you all should be if you're listening to this. And he discovers that his mother is sort of against the Nazi regime.
She's a Weimar objector.
Yes, and she's hiding this young Jewish woman, Elsa, in the attic. Young Jojo is fanatical about the Nazis, there's this fanaticism within him, and
it doesn't shy away from the symbols.
No.
And that it's everywhere. The propaganda posters.
It's really everywhere. It's really saturated. Like swastikas everywhere, Adolf Hitler, both the real and the imaginary. Much prefer Taika's portrayal. Definitely the best on-screen Hitler, I think.
The best comedy.
Oh, for sure.
There's really a lot to say. I would like to point out a small correction. It was left undecided, but Sam Rockwell's character, Captain Klessendorf, or Captain K, was of the Wehrmacht, not of the loyalist section for the army.
Yeah, he's an interesting character, Sam Rockwell. You might have seen him in films like he played George W. Bush in Vice. He was in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. He's a great actor.
He is.
And I think this is... every performance of his is really up there for, best performance of his career. He's an interesting character.
Yes.
And there are things about him, kind of a bit more spoilery. As we said, a lot of the spoilers in this are more in relation to the humour. So we'll leave that undiscussed. But he's a complex character through these little nuances.
It shows that there's a little bit more behind, the uniform, much like a lot of these characters.
Yeah, I think there's a few other characters who are sort of more undeniably... of the party, of its beliefs. Rebel Wilson's character, I guess, especially.
I don't usually like Rebel Wilson's humour, but somehow it works here.
It does, because Taika Waititi is a director who sort of lets the actors do their own thing. He doesn't direct them too much. He doesn't, define that. So that was really her own making, I guess, reading what was on the script or making it her own. But Sam Rockwell's character is an interesting one, because I did hear criticisms of a sympathetic Nazi portrayal. But I don't think he is necessarily a Nazi in that way. He wears the uniform and he's fighting for his country because that was the done thing back then. Yeah,
it was a clear... the thing that people have to realise is there's a clear distinction. He's not wearing the black of the Schuhstaffel. He's wearing the dark aqua of the Wehrmacht, which were just ordinary people.
Yeah, just people fighting for their country, not necessarily the ideals of the party that was in charge of the country.
A good prominent example of this would be, and this isn't trying to turn into a historical debate, but a good example of a person who served the German army in that era and was not a fanatic was Erwin Rommel.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most famous German tank commanders.
I think that there is a lot of complexity to the characters here, and, it sort of trusts you as the viewer.
Yeah.
Because Jojo, he approaches Elsa when he sort of accepts that she's going to be living in their attic, in their house, and he decides to approach her to write a book on the Jewish people. And he's been told all this, this nonsense, obviously, thanks to the fascist teachings and all that, he's been taught all this nonsense.
The one thing this film does well, and particularly with how it shows with Jojo and his friend Yorkie, is the cult of personality that was bred.
The opening titles. It goes and plays a German language version of I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, actually recorded by the Beatles themselves, and combined with the tradition, the classic, I say, with air quotes,
the Fuhrer as like a member of the Fab Four.
Yeah, it really makes you understand the cult of personality and that was around Hitler and the Nazi Party. And I sort of did find myself smiling and being charmed by this young boy despite him running around the streets screaming Heil Hitler and wanting nothing more than to kill Jewish people. But I'm like, oh wow, okay. Like I said, there is that complexity, and a lot of people, like I said, had issues with like a sympathetic Nazi character or all this stuff here and there. But I think it trusts the viewer enough to know that, because when Elsa goes and tells stories about the Jewish people, she of course feeds into Jojo's
paranoia,
his paranoia, his beliefs and all that, by telling him all this nonsense that the Jewish people are monsters and they grow horns and they have snake tongues and all this other stuff. And you have to be aware of that, because I think a lot of people might just take this at face value and go, oh, this is being really anti-Semitic, or it's being really pro-Nazi by having a sympathetic Nazi
I wouldn't call
character.
this anti-Semitic, seeing that Taika is of the Jewish faith.
Oh yeah, of course, but I mean, people will say.
Yeah, I mean, they can say what they want, but
yeah,
this is a man who's probably had family that were related to people who went through this, and there are still people that suffer through this today, but it's a film that we need in this day and age, that one that's not shy to pull the punches, or, to actually hit home. It should mean not pull the punches.
This was based upon a book. I think
Caging
it's called
Skies.
Caging Skies. And I did hear as well that it was based upon stories that Taika's own mother told him, which is why it won Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars. From what I know about the original book, it's all here apart from the imaginary Hitler, Drop Dead Hitler, I should call him. And yeah, he's really fun, as weird as that is to say. This Adolf Hitler character.
It's funny watching him, because you've got this little boy who's subconsciously projecting the image of Adolf, and it's just in different areas. It's a wonderful contrast of the imaginary friend is what the indoctrination has turned into.
Yeah, and as he becomes more disenfranchised with it, he becomes more... Adolf, I should say, becomes more vicious, more
Adolf-like. Rather than, your best friend.
There's apparently a little detail there in regards to his costuming.
Yes, the uniform changes as the film progresses, showing that Jojo's faith is disappearing. So when he starts off, it's brown.
Yep.
When he was at his height, he'd just become chancellor and all that when he was in charge of the SA. And then it changes to his khaki uniform when he was last seen, and then brained himself.
Yes, I did like that final appearance. Again, we don't want to go too much into spoilers. But yeah, that's a really fun detail, and...
it's a good detail if you pay attention.
One thing I really liked about this was something that he strove for, was to show Germany as being this lush, vibrant place and very fashionable. All the characters are very...
oh yeah, no one
fashionable.
Looks...
no, there's no greys, there's no...
except for when they play with the lighting and colouring.
Oh, of
for
course.
certain shots. But
yeah,
but it's still a very vibrant and colourful place.
Yeah, especially Scarlett Johansson's, her outfits and all that. They're very fashionable of the time. And that's one thing he strove for, was to kind of show this. And even after everything that happens, I mean, you know how World War II happened. You probably know how it happened. You probably know how this film's going to end. But I was just surprised to see, after all this fighting and bloodshed, there's just people going about their daily business, and then just, dressed in brightly coloured clothes and don't seem to be too bothered by the horrors which have really gone on. And I don't think that was so much... I think it was sort of drawing parallels to like the wartime spirit which you really saw in British propaganda. Despite, the bombing raids and all that, they were still out there, delivering the mail or delivering the milk.
Exactly.
And helping and going to work even though their house had been shelled to hell. It's that kind of... but from the German side, that kind of thing.
Well, the war's over, and they don't really know that the wall's about to go up.
Ah, yes, it's all downhill from there, really, isn't it? Do you have any other thoughts about this film?
The characters are great. The themes of the story are wonderful, and unfortunately, the stuff I want to talk about is spoiler territory.
Okay.
And I'm just going to say, for the radio version, this is a wonderful film. If you're able to get it on DVD, I recommend it. It's M-rated, so, even the kids can see it.
Yeah, like I said, the story without the imaginary Hitler is very similar to many other stories before. And I guess they're showing kids, the boy in the striped pajamas in school now. So
but the boy in the striped pajama is more depressing than this one is. I mean, I reckon Caging Skies will definitely be of a similar value, but Boy in the Striped Pajamas is about Jewish prisoners in the Holocaust camps, or the death camps, I should say.
Yeah.
That's why it's so... but it's also fitting into that thing of, we need films like this, we need books like this, because we can't forget history.
No, we can't. I do like, though, that it doesn't hold your hand and it doesn't establish a lot of things which, some films would. They go into great detail, perhaps explaining what this is, what this means. But this one, it's just like, you probably know all of this, or you should already have this context. So that's why.
I think one of the best scenes that really hit home for me was, and this is minor spoiler territory, when they first introduced Scarlett Johansson's character, Rosie, you don't see her fully until Jojo's fully awake from his accident.
Yes.
And then you see him and her going out through their days, and then when you see her next, when he's getting his therapy after his accident, she's introduced via her feet. A few scenes beforehand, they have a shot of some feet, and you think, okay, what's this? It's people that have been hung as enemies of the state.
Yes.
And then once we go through a few scenes and the film's just past its halfway point, we're reintroduced to Rosie's character through her feet. We don't see her face, but we look up and...
Yes. I did notice that almost immediately. And I was thinking, oh, okay, I think I understand where this is going to go from here. And unfortunately, but that's the reality. And yeah, it was quite clever. And her character, her performance was interesting. How she almost had like a sort of sibling relationship with her own son.
She was more childlike than the child.
Yeah, she was an optimist, and she openly celebrated that Germany was losing, that the Allies were closing in, and the war would all be over. And Jojo's absolutely horrified by this. And once you get away from the childlike wonder and the imaginary friend shenanigans with Jojo, there's some really good heart-to-heart scenes with Rosie and Elsa in the attic.
Absolutely.
Again, it's not full context, but it's just enough because you know all this already, and it doesn't get bogged down in that, and it allows it to explore new avenues or to really delve into the characters. And we'll go a little bit into spoilers, and then we'll have the rest of this up on YouTube. It's my YouTube channel, Royce Pentaghast, Royce Pentaghast. Hopefully I spelt that right. Last time I had to do that a few times.
Hopefully.
But you want to go a little bit more into spoilers?
I want to go into spoilers. This film really chooses its moments well. I think one of the best, as I explained just before, best moment that was for one of the more serious moments was when we find out that Jojo's mother had been hung as an enemy of the state. But scenes beforehand, she and him are walking past the nooses, and she stops. He looks away. She forces him to look. And just says, this is life.
Yeah.
We need to stop this.
Exactly.
And the only way that we're going to do this is when we win. Either way.
It's quite interesting because when she is revealed to be dead, you don't actually see her face.
No.
And I did read that Taika believes that death, it's a very personal thing. And in that moment, he didn't want us, the audience, to encroach upon this personal moment. We didn't have permission, as he said, to see what Jojo saw. And as I said at the beginning of this is very much a Taika Waititi film. If you've seen any of his other films, he's directed a few: Eagle vs. Shark, Boy in 2010, What We Do in the Shadows, a vampire film, Hunt for the Wilder People with Sam Neill, and Thor Ragnarok, big Marvel movies film.
Which I think is what has allowed him to do films like this.
Definitely with the scale, I think. Because I was thinking, this is good. He's returning to something he obviously is passionate about and wants to do. But the extra money and the extra exposure has allowed him...
Not to mention the ability to grab more star power.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, the first few films is just him and his mates like Jermaine Clement playing all the roles, would make it sound a lot less professional than it actually is. But yeah, it is. He's definitely reached that thing, and those are common themes throughout all these films. I think family and death.
Family and death.
There are a few death scenes in previous films, I think, of his that do share similarities with Rosie's in this film. There is a death in fairly early on in Hunt for the Wilder People. You haven't seen it yet, but it's there, and it's much the same deal. Yeah, I really do think family is sort of a consistent...
It's a very consistent theme for a lot of his films that have been shown so far. Even before Ragnarok, surprisingly, the big Marvel film.
Oh, I think that film perhaps did the family bit the best, because all those films are really about family.
Yeah.
2 had some good moments with his mother. But I think, that one really delved into sins of the father, and maybe it sort of touched upon it a little in this. But I think another consistent theme is humanity.
Yes.
And even with Thor Ragnarok, you're dealing with Asgardian, gods and metahumans, if that's the right term. In
Wrong
regards
franchise.
To the wrong franchise. But the humanity of like this Asgardian god, and especially the humanity of all these characters who may or may not be. Stephen Merchant's role in Jojo Rabbit, he described it as like, he was... those people were sort of these petty, bureaucrats who weren't paid much attention before the war began, given these immense positions of power, and of course went completely nuts with them. And he is very... I
mean, granted, the scene is funny, but it also has that intensity to it.
Yeah, it's
once he gets down to brass.
Yeah.
Because it just starts off with, hi, Mum home. No, okay, you're in charge. May we come in?
Yeah.
And just walking through Heil Hitler, and then a couple more characters, and it just starts, this round up. It's like, okay, so he's just going to take the piss out of this. And then suddenly it's like, oh, here we go.
And I think one thing as well is that there is always a balance of the comedic and the tragic in Taika's films. At times, the tragic makes me feel guilty for laughing at the comedic moments, but I mean, that's why the comedic moments are there, so you can laugh, so you can have fun. And I did feel bad when those more dramatic, sad moments came around, and I'm like, oh, I feel bad for laughing earlier. Even though that's... I guess that's life. Really.
It is, and and this is one of the great things of the film. It picks its moments. I think one of the best contrasts of horrible and dramatic and funny would be the youth camp when they're training. He gets picked on because he doesn't fight during the war games, and he gets forced to try and kill a rabbit, hence the title and the nickname, and he just gets a pep talk from his imaginary Adolf, goes running through, grabs a grenade out of Captain K's hand, throws it, oh crap. And it's like, okay, so what is he going to do with this? The kid's just accidentally blown himself up. Alright, so it's a little dramatic, and then, there's the comedy. People screaming, the director fainting.
Yeah, there's some jokes like that, like knife in the shin.
Yeah.
The rocket.
Dropping of the Panzerschreck.
Yes, that one.
In the film.
There's jokes like that which I think are big, more, like sort of the big trailer moments. I remember those moments very vividly from the trailer. They're the sort of things that which rope you in, which make you think it's going to be more of a slapstick, silly thing. But it's sort of those moments scattered throughout.
Also has some wonderful dramatic moments to contrast, but the comedy is wonderful where it's there. I think one of the best dramatic moments is when the Germans and the British and the Americans are attacking from one side, and the Russians have finally reached the city where he lives. It doesn't specifically say where Jojo lives in Germany. I assume somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
He's just watching all these people, the last stand of the Wehrmacht, the last stand of the Volkssturm, which is just the people's army, literally civilians with armbands and rifles, the Hitler Youth running around, and he's just standing there. Everyone else is... and it just cuts into slow motion, and you just realize, this is it. Half these people are doing it because they don't know anything better, and half of them are just going, I don't want to lose my house. I don't want some Russian dude sitting in my chair.
Sorry, our review is a little disjointed today.
Yes, there's just so much to talk on, and so much to try and cover without...
spoiling.
Really ruining the film for anyone to go see it, because we could talk about the film for hours. There are amazing scenes, I think. And just some of the subtle hints that goes through, like Captain K and his aide, Freddie Finkel, possibly being lovers. Which is handled really well. Yeah. And I think the only blatant sledgehammer to the knee that we get is, look at this costume design I've done for the final push. You know, you've got this feather and that for aerodynamics and all that. Okay,
it's very flamboyant.
Very flamboyant character, and that's all you need.
I think to sum up this is a film that I think trusts its audience to understand that what's being presented doesn't necessarily endorse it or encourage it, even though Adolf Hitler is his imaginary friend, and he's funny, and he's silly, and has some fantastic jokes. It's not saying that, it's not saying he's good. He's obviously the bad guy here.
Look at it this way. This meets the requirements to be shown in Germany.
Yeah, wow, really?
It meets the legal requirements. It's not exactly portraying the Nazis as good. It is art, so they're allowed to use the swastika. Otherwise, they'd have to make a separate version where they've edited it all out.
Yeah.
It's not exactly... Like I said, it doesn't pull its punches with the subject matters.
Yeah.
This type of stuff did happen. And quite frankly, if it meets the legal requirements to be shown in a country like Germany, who's but still ashamed and still feels the effects of this previous generation.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Then we must be doing something right.
Yeah, definitely.
At least with our films.
Oh, a win for Taika. Definitely.
A win for Taika.
I want to talk about Taika Waititi as a director himself. How many of his films have you seen?
I have sadly only seen the two, Ragnarok and this one. I tried to secure a friend's DVD copy of Hunt for the Wilder People and was unable to at late notice.
Taika's been around for nearly 20 years. He's been involved in projects like Flight of the Conchords. He wrote the initial script for the Disney film Moana before the countless rewrites that happen, as with all Disney things. Obviously, he's had all these films like Hunt for the Wilder People and What We Do in the Shadows, which is now a series you can watch on Foxtel with Matt Berry from the IT Crowd in it. All these vampires, existing within this human world and the humour that comes with that. But he's also become deeply involved with the Disney productions of Marvel. I mean, he's done Thor Ragnarok. He's doing the next Thor movie, which comes out next year.
Yeah.
And he's also involved in Star Wars.
He directed an episode of The Mandalorian. He voiced a character in The Mandalorian. The big thing that he came out saying was working on The Mandalorian is really hard with all the restrictions.
Really?
Yeah.
Which is what I was going to ask you. Do you think that this path which he's taken, because he is, I guess, most known for Thor and for all the other stuff, Star Wars stuff, and for What We Do in the Shadows, which is, a funny New Zealand vampire comedy film. Do you think it's the path that's best for him as a director? Because I do feel a bit sad that people only really know him for stuff, whereas his other films like Boy, Hunt for the Wilder People, which is obviously much more well known and much more widely seen, when he can do stuff like that, and he can do stuff like Jojo Rabbit.
I think he has a good idea of what he wants to do now. Because I'll refer to another famous New Zealand director, Peter Jackson. He's now stuck doing fantasy when he really was... How he got started was splatterpunk films, horror comedies.
Yes.
Dead Alive being a good example. And now he's just kind of stuck as that guy who did Lord of the Rings. While I think Taika has managed to... He's done the stuff that he liked in the past. What We Do in the Shadows put him partly on the map. Hunt for the Wilder People firmly had him on the map. And now Thor Ragnarok has pretty much pushed him into his own unique spot.
Yeah.
And he's allowed to do what he wants, but at the same time, he's still got these big franchises that will say, we got good results out of you. Let's do business again.
Yeah, and it's like, I think it's kind of a, you do one for us, we'll do one for you. Exactly. Because this film, I did feel it was sort of a return to those more indie roots where he could sort of tell a more honest human story that wasn't restrained or restricted by the trappings of all the big franchises which basically dominate cinema today.
Absolutely. A lot of films feel like they've been compromised on what they're doing because of either A, they're from a certain studio, or B, because Hollywood.
Yeah.
And this one, much like Parasite, which is a review we did earlier this year, is one of those I feel like are going to be used as the two examples of films that are going to be trying to shake the foundations of Hollywood.
Yeah.
To try and get that changed, because a film like Jojo probably would have been a lot different if he had have released it 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there is minimal CGI. It's mostly helped, as CGI should be, to sort of expand the scope and to add to it.
The CGI moment was the fighter that was that have been shot down that was slowly falling.
Yeah.
And possibly the night bombings.
Yes. You've got the star power now, because this probably would have been shot in somewhere in New Zealand.
Would have been shot somewhere in New Zealand, would have had only well-known Maori actors and maybe one big international star.
Possibly, yeah.
It might have ended up being Sam Neill or Tamara Morrison. Who knows?
Yeah. So I definitely think that it's putting him out there, and if he can make a change, that's for the best. But you talk about The Mandalorian, and there's nothing in his episode. It's a fun episode, and it's probably one of the best ones out there.
Final. Yeah.
Yeah, but what makes that definitively Taika? And I'm sort of looking at Thor Ragnarok as well, saying, okay, well, apart from, I guess, the humour and the themes, what makes this a Taika Waititi film?
It's hard to tell.
Yeah. But even looking at Jojo Rabbit, I mean, you compare it to A Hunt for the Wilder People or Boy, and there's nothing really there exactly that makes the two of them, apart from, I guess, the thematic and the characters and the humour. But it's not like, you've got some directors like Quentin Tarantino.
You can tell that he sticks to his own style.
Yeah.
And from what I understand of Taika, he uses his style, but he changes it up slightly. Like, from what I know of Hunt for the Wilder People, it's a coming of age, much like Jojo Rabbit, but it's more about a kid who's stuck in the foster care system.
They're all about coming of age. Boy is about this young boy whose dad is sort of a deadbeat, but in his mind, the dad's played by Taika Waititi, of course. In his mind, his dad is both, a samurai and a war hero. And there's actually scenes there of him, I think, reenacting World War II fight scenes in the New Zealand landscape. And it's also quite funny to watch them talk about things like Thor or Captain America within the confines of that film, when later on he'd be directing those big films. But yeah, I definitely think the coming of age, the humanity, life and death, it's definitely consistent themes.
It's a humanising film in a very bleak era of humanity.
Definitely. Definitely humanise those scout troopers. The dicks.
That's what you get for hiring SNL.
This has been the Geeks Review, our review of Jojo Rabbit. We'll be back next week, hopefully, and we don't exactly know what we're going to do. Maybe we're going to be looking at some of our favourite Marvel movies, because that was going to be in the lead up to the big Marvel movie of the year, Black Widow, but that's been
postponed along with a lot of other films.
So it basically means we can stay at home and just not spend a lot of money watching things which have already come out and stuff that maybe you yourself haven't seen. There's a lot of great movies and a lot of great TV shows which are now out on DVD and general home release. Knives Out, Ready or Not.
Yeah.
So many other films. We'll see what we do.
Yeah.
This is the Geeks Review. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.